Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCGplayer affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. On today's episode, I've got a brand new deck tech for you, focused on zombies, brains and stuff. So the ground rules for my deck techs are as follows. The budget is $50 or less, and that's an overall deck cost. So that cost includes shipping as well as commanders as long as they're $10 or less, but basic lands will not be included in that price. On my deck techs, I'm going to take you through the strategy, the tactics, and how the deck wins. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Garen, a Golden Pig tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without amazing patrons like Garen. And for the personalized deck tech, Garen chose Varina Lich Queen with a focus on zombie, tribal, and discard synergies. Varina is a 4/4 zombie wizard that costs 1 white, blue, black. She has whenever you attack with one or more zombies, draw that many cards, then discard that many cards, you gain that much life. And by paying 2, you can exile 2 cards from your graveyard to create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. So although zombies are dead or undead or whatever, they're all about life and drawing cards and discarding. The more zombies that you attack with, the more life that you gain and the more that you loot. Again, we've got some discard synergies in this deck that benefit you for each and every single card that you discard. And on top of that, putting a ton of cards into your graveyard can help you utilize Varina's other ability to make zombies. So it's just basically a win-win. So the strategy for this deck is pretty straightforward. We're going to create a ton of zombies and swing away. And then how do we win with this deck? Well, it's basically Dawn of the Dead. We're going to overwhelm our opponents with our zombie army and our discard value. I guess Dawn of the Dead didn't really have anything about discard value in it, but the zombie army was there. You know what I mean. As always, though, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics to show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's start things off with tactic number 1, Hail to the Queen. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, because that's what I say on pretty much every deck tech. Wayfarer's Bauble is absurdly good ramp. It gets you a basic land on turn 2. Wizards, reprint Wayfarer's Bauble. Thank you. Next up, we've got some efficient mana rocks with Prismatic Lens, Star Compass, and Sphere of the Suns. Prismatic Lens can help us filter our mana, Star Compass can tap for any of our colors depending on our land situation, and Sphere of the Suns can straight up tap for any of our colors, but only 3 times. Next up, of course, we're running all the signets and talismans that we can, based on budget, with Orzhov Signet, Azorius Signet, and Talisman of Hierarchy. So again, Wizards, on top of reprinting Wayfarer's Bauble, please reprint the signets more, and talismans as well, including the old ones. They've never been reprinted. But finally, we're going to be running some more budget-friendly mana rocks with our 3 lockets. They might not be as efficient as our other mana rocks, but they can help us draw us cards in a pinch. But after we've ramped, what are we going to do with our mana? I mean, I guess it should be pretty obvious. We're going to cast spells, but what kind of spells we're going to cast, I should say. So let's go through some of those spells in tactic number 2, Subordinates. Every queen needs an army, and this queen needs a zombie army, so we're going to be running plenty of things that can make zombie tokens. Liliana's Reaver is tough to block since it has Death Touch, and if it's not blocked, we get a 2/2 zombie and a play tapped. And they discard a card, but again, the zombie is what we're focusing on. Next up, Newscraft Mob comes into play with some counters, and whenever players cast spells, we get counters off the Newscraft Mob in exchange for zombies. And then whenever our opponent's non-token creatures die, Overseer of the Dam makes us a zombie. And on top of that, it actually kills something when it comes into play too. Next up, we've got 2 Madness cards, which work great in this deck with our commander's looting ability with Giss's Bidding and From Under the Floorboards. Giss's Bidding gives us 2 zombies, and From Under the Floorboards gives us X, and we also gain X life. An extremely mana-efficient way to make a ton of zombies with this deck, though, is Rise from the Tides. It makes us a zombie for each and every single instant sorcery card in our graveyard. So the more that we loot, the more zombies we're going to be making. Next up, there's Siphon Flesh, which is a very friendly card that involves everyone at the table. Each of our opponents gets to sacrifice a creature, and we get a zombie for each creature sacrificed this way. So, everybody wins. And finally, there's a card that's going to make everyone even happier with Awaken the Erstwhile. It takes everyone's hands and basically turns them into zombies, so yeah, everyone gets to join in the zombie army fun. Except when they attack with their zombies, they don't get to gain life or loot like we do, but still, everyone gets to have fun with zombies. Speaking of fun with zombies, let's move on to tactic number 3, Enchanted Haunting. We've got some enchantments that can help us out as well with this zombie making fun with Zombie Infestation and Open the Graves. Zombie Infestation lets us create a zombie by discarding 2 cards. And Open the Graves says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a zombie. So throughout the game, each of these can help us out in a variety of situations. Zombie Infestation gives us another way to discard cards on top of our loot ability, and it works really well with our discard synergies. And Open the Graves gives us some extra value whenever any of our non-token creatures die. Speaking of value though, let's talk about some ways to make our zombies even more valuable. So now it's time for us to move on to tactic number 4, Malod. That was terrible, sorry, I have an awful British accent. Anyways, Varina benefits us for our zombies, but we've got plenty of other cards that can help out as well. Binding Mummy says whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, you may tap target artifact or creature. We're going to be making a ton of zombies, so when we make those zombies, we can tap down our opponent's armies to help get ours through. And Graph Harvest can be especially effective, giving all of our zombies menace for just a black. Next up, Liliana's Mastery is going to give all of our zombies +1/+1, and when it comes into play, we get 2 2/2s, which are now 3 3s essentially because this is in play. You get what I mean. And Liliana apparently also has a devotee who wanted to join in as well that gives all of our zombies +1/+0. On top of that, at our end step, if something died, we can pay 1 and a black to make another zombie, so more zombie fun. Next up, there's Lord of the Accursed, which helps us out in multiple ways, pumping our team, and also we can pay 1 and a black and tap to give all zombies menace until end of turn. But the best of these lords has got to be Diregraph Captain, but don't tell the other lords I said that. They get jealous pretty easily. Anyways, Diregraph Captain pumps our team, and on top of that, it's going to drain an opponent whenever a zombie dies. Making our zombie tokens even more deadly can really put us ahead of our opponents. And we're not quite done with doing that just yet, so it's time to move on to tactic number 5, token time. First up, we've got 3 zombie wizards that make a zombie token and help out all of our zombie tokens. First up, there's Vizier the Scorpion, which has a mass 1, which is kind of a strange-ish mechanic, at least I think it is. You basically make a zombie army and then put a +1/+1 counter on it, and if you amass again, you're just putting counters on that same army. It's unfortunate because you really would rather create more zombies than just one big one, but that's okay. Regardless, Vizier the Scorpion also gives zombie tokens we control Death Touch. Death Touch makes it really hard for our opponents to attack into us and also to block our zombies. So throughout the game, we're going to be taking less damage and dealing out more. And then Gleaming Overseer is going to give our zombie tokens Hexproof and Menace. So it protects our zombies and again helps get them through. But perhaps the best way to get them through is with Eternal Skylord that gives all of them flying. And a zombie flying at you has got to be the scariest thing ever. So don't be surprised if your opponents just concede right there and then. Or they can concede when they see one of these 2 cards. Ava Windguide gives your creature tokens Flying and Vigilance, so now Flying Vigilant zombies. And Wonder gives them flying if it's in your graveyard, as long as you control an island, and again, we're going to be looting a lot, so we're going to be able to get a ton of cards into our graveyard, including Wonder. Now, if flying zombies don't kill your opponents, our next tactic can help with that. So now let's move on to tactic number 6, Drained. First up, there's Low Subordinate, which drains each of your opponents for 3 for the low price of controlling your commander at the start of your combat. And then there's Gary, who's going to drain your opponents for even more, draining them each for your Devotion to Black, and then you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Kakusho, eat your heart out. But we're nowhere near done with draining just yet though, so next up we've got Corpse Knight, Wayward Servant, and Shepherd of Rot. Corpse Knight drains each of our opponents for 1 every single time a creature enters the battlefield under our control. And then Wayward Servant is zombie specific, but it takes it a step further, draining each opponent for 1, and we gain 1. And then Shepherd of Rot can be a death sentence to our opponents who probably aren't gaining anywhere near as much life as us. By tapping it, each player loses 1 life for every single zombie in play. And keep in mind that this does count your opponent's zombies, so if you were nice enough to give them some tokens with Awaken the Erstwhile, it counts those too. And if those zombie tokens that we were nice enough to give them happen to die, then Vengeful Dead is going to get vengeful on them. Because whenever it or another zombie is put into a graveyard from play, each opponent loses 1 life. And then Plague Belcher is similar, but it only counts our zombies, unfortunately. And finally there's Gem Palm Polluter, which we're pretty much never going to cast, but when we cycle it, we can have target player lose 1 life for each zombie in play. So again, sharing is caring. Now, although we're going to say yes to sharing, we're going to have to say no to some other things, though. So now let's move on to tactic number 7, Counterplay. First up, there's Lazotep Plating, which lets us amass, which again, that's a thing. Hopefully we don't have a zombie army already out there, but if we do, it just gets bigger. Anyways, you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. So this can give us a nice little token on top of protecting ourselves and our army too. And then of course in the counterplay tactic, we've got counter spells. Makes sense, right? Negate is a pretty straightforward one, it's just going to counter target non-creature spell. And then both Circular Logic and Countervailing Winds work fantastically in this deck. They're going to counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each card in our graveyard. On top of that, Circular Logic has Madness and Countervailing Winds has Cycling. But what happens when we don't have a counterspell and something gets on the field that we didn't really want there? Well, we could just concede, but we probably should just move on to tactic number 8, Buried. First up, we've got 2 responses that can cycle with Cast Out and Forsake the Worldly. Cast Out is going to exile target non-land permanent until it leaves the battlefield, and Forsake the Worldly is going to exile target artifact or enchantment. And then Crush Contraband can exile an artifact, an enchantment, or both. You know, actually, now that I'm going through this tactic, I realize that Buried probably isn't the best description for this, because exiling, you're really not putting into the graveyard, you're not doing that kind of thing. I just wanted to kind of include, like, the zombie theme for this. Yeah. So, yeah, comment below and tell me what Tactic 8 should have been called. But while you're doing that, I'm going to move on to tactic number 9, Dig Down. So, like most commander decks, we need ways to draw us cards. And although Varina does draw us cards, technically that's actually looting, so we're not really gaining any card advantage, though it does help us kind of filter what cards we need in our hand. So it's more like card selection and not exactly card advantage, but it still helps out. Anyways, card draw. Corpse Augur. When it dies, we draw X and lose X, where X is the number of creature cards in one player's graveyard. And when one of our zombies dies, we draw 1 card and lose 1 life thanks to Undead Augur. And then Midnight Reaper is similar, drawing us 1 card and hitting us for 1 whenever one of our non-token creatures dies. Now, although this doesn't counter zombie tokens, it can still be very effective in this deck. Next up, there's Read the Bones, which does a scry 2, draw 2, and lose 2. Again, we're going to be gaining a ton of life thanks to our commander, which can pretty much offset any life loss that we have. And then Frantic Search lets us loot for 2, for 3, but for free. That was hard to say. Anyways, then there's Forgotten Creation, which first off, how do you ever forget that thing after seeing it? I mean, that thing looks pretty memorable. I would have a hard time forgetting it. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may discard all the cards in your hand if you do draw that many cards. So a zombie that lets you loot even further, yeah, that's a good fit for this deck. And then there's Factor Fiction, and basically an X version of Factor Fiction with Epiphany the Drownyard, but in reverse. And then Read the Runes lets us draw a ton of cards at the cost of discarding or sacrificing things. So this can even come in handy with all those drain effects that we talked about earlier. You know, tactic number 6, drained. That one. Anyways, finally we've got a Cycling Tutor with Razcast Right and Call to Netherworld, which is a card that we're pretty much never going to cast, hopefully. It's got Madness 0 and it says return target black creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So again, with all of our looting, this is basically just a free spell that gets us something back. And speaking of looting, it's time for us to move on to our final tactic. And that would be tactic number 10, discard. You see what I did there? I like dis, like as in this, but discard as in like one word but two. Yeah. Moving on from that great joke, first up there's Ruthless Sniper. It says whenever you cycle or discard a card, you may pay 1 if you do put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So this can help us shrink creatures or just take them out. Next up there's Drake Haven, which basically turns this into a zombie Drake tribal deck because you're going to be making a ton of Drakes now. Whenever you cycle or discard a card, you can pay 1, and if you do, you get a 2/2 Drake with flying, which is better than a 2/2 zombie on the ground. No offense, zombie. That is, of course, unless your zombies have flying or they're being pumped by one of the lords. Anyways, Drakes are great too. And then Faith of the Devoted can drain your opponents really quickly. It says whenever you cycle or discard a card, you may pay 1. If you do, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Again, thanks to your commander, you're going to be looting a ton, and now you can put all those discarded cards to work with any of these cards. Or you can take them out with a very friendly-looking Sir Conrad the Grim. I hear he's great at parties. Anyways, whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves the graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. That's a lot of text to say whenever creatures hit or leave the graveyard, he's going to ping everyone. Next up, there's Cure of Mysteries, which says whenever you cycle or discard another card, scry 1. So now when you swing with your massive zombie army, you get to gain life, draw and discard cards, and then scry a ton. Yeah, that's a lot of value. And your opponents are going to especially love watching you scry 1 10 times. Now, as enjoyable and as powerful as that is, it's still not quite as good as the Golden Pig of this deck. And for those of you that haven't seen the show before, hi. And also, the Golden Pig of the deck is going to be the number 1 card out of the 99. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Archfiend of Ifnir. Archfiend of Ifnir is a 5/4 flying demon that costs 3 black. Whenever you cycle or discard another card, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature opponent's control, and it's got cycling too. So first up, ironically, the Golden Pig of the zombie tribal deck is a demon. Yep, but I'm sticking with it, okay? With this in play and your zombie army, it's going to be impossible for your opponents to keep creatures in play with the amount that you're going to be looting. Even if they have a creature that's large enough to survive that first barrage of -1/-1 counters, it's going to be tiny, and the next turn it's going to be dead. This helps get our zombies through and keeps our opponent's boards clear, and that's why it's the Golden Pig. Again, even though it's a demon in a zombie tribal deck. I'm sticking with it. Anyways, a huge thanks to Garen for supporting this channel and for picking Varina. I had a blast building this deck. And now that we've gone through all the cards in this deck, outside the lands, let's move on to the price breakdown. The average Varina Lich Queen EDH rec deck is going to set you back $356.36. Our deck is going to be much more affordable than that, coming in at $48.14. And with all that money you're going to be saving, let's talk about some reasonable upgrades. First up, we can add in Death Baron by taking out Epiphany the Drownyard. Next up, let's add in Undead Warchief by taking out Loyal Subordinate. And then let's add in Cemetery Reaper by taking out Awaken the Erstwhile. Next up, let's add in Bone Miser by taking out Liliana's Devotee. And then let's put in Diagraph Colossus by taking out Binding Mummy. Finally, let's add in Endless Ranks of the Dead by taking out Ruthless Sniper. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know if Varina is your favorite zombie tribal commander of all time, or if it's someone else. Yeah, let me know in the comments below, and as always, thanks again, and have a good one.